Hey, what's up? Welcome to Basscraft. So it feels like ages since I've done one of these, but it's only been a few weeks because I know the last one was Simon Francis, a whopper double-part 3-hour episode. But I was actually on holidays there. I was in Spain walking the Camino. It's like this pilgrimage you do. I wasn't doing it for any like religious reasons. I just wanted to go and clear my head. So I did 200 kilometers in 7 days. Absolutely loved it. Sore feet now, but the head is clear, and I'm re-energized to do some of this stuff. If you want to know anything about it, just drop me a line. It's really a class thing to do, especially after all this COVID stuff, you know, just being on computers and hearing people talk about that all the time. It just got withering. So there was no COVID talk on this and almost no technology used, and it was absolutely perfect. So yeah, if anyone wants to know about it, just send me a message. I can tell you about it. Highly recommend it. So today I'm talking to Joel McIver, the editor of Bass Player magazine, but he's been the editor of Bass Guitar magazine since 2012. So one's an American magazine, one's the British one, and we talk about that in the chat. So yeah, we talk about loads of stuff, I suppose. What's popular in the bass world right now, the longevity of the Bass magazine, and of course his own career as a writer outside of the Bass magazine world. So he co-wrote a few biographies. He did Glenn Hughes, that was one of his first big ones, and he has a new one out in October, this in a few weeks actually. It's called Fathers, Brothers and Sons: Surviving Anguish, Abandonment and Anthrax. So that's Frank Bello, the bass player from Anthrax, his new book, which is co-written with Joel. Sounds amazing. He was telling me about it in this episode, and I'm really looking forward to getting that. So yeah, hope you enjoy the episode, guys. As usual, like, subscribe, all that. I'm taking a little break from uploading stuff on YouTube apart from the podcast, because I just need to take a break from being on the screen so much after, you know, the summer, and I uploaded a lot of things. So if you want to see where I'm at the moment, just follow me on Instagram. So I still upload stuff there because it takes no time. It's just literally just click and record what I'm doing and just pop it up. So yeah, see you in a minute, and yeah, enjoy this one. Oh, I still have the box of Basscraft t-shirts, so if you're looking to get someone something for Christmas, get in there now. I'll send it to you and you'll be sorted. Any bass player or musician would be delighted to get one. So yeah, enjoy the episode. Joel, delighted to have you on, the editor of Bass Player, and it was Bass Player Mag before that?
It was Bass Guitar Mag before that.
Bass Guitar Mag.
Yeah, so let me see now. My history as the editor of this magazine, I started freelancing for them, writing the odd feature here and there in about 2002, 2003, when it was Bass Guitar Magazine in the UK. And, you know, I would write the odd piece for them. Time passed, I wrote a lot of stuff for them. And we always had, as our kind of archetype, like the best bass magazine in the world, easy, was Bass Player, the American mag, as you know, it was like this insanely good mag that had been going since 1990. And we at Bass Guitar Magazine always wanted to try and equal that mag if we could, that was our gold standard. Then in 2012, I became the editor of that mag. And, I wrote books on the side and continued to do all that and did freelance stuff. And it was just all part of the freelance portfolio. And then, what do I want to say? I think in about 2018, that magazine was bought by Future Publishing, who run Metal Hammer and Guitar World and Guitarist and all these killer magazines, for whom I had also freelanced for years and years as a writer for Metal Hammer, right? And Total Guitar and Rhythm, and millions of magazines, billions of them, it feels like. And so suddenly I was the editor of a magazine owned by Future, and then they did this interesting thing. Future acquired the American publisher of Bass Player and Guitar World and Guitar Player and a bunch of cool mags. And so then I was now the editor of Bass Player and Bass Guitar. Excuse me, the English and the American mag, which I know sounds weird. Different countries.
So it was exactly the same magazine, just a different...
They were, yeah, they were. And then last year we decided to change the British mag's name to Bass Player UK. So here we go. So now I was the editor of Bass Guitar for many years. Then I was editing both mags, even though they were the same. And now I'm editing Bass Player, and they are continuing to be the same, except one has British English and one has American English. So that's my day job, really. That takes up most of my time. And then I write a book or two a year as well, all of which adds up to, well, they say a career is something that you look back on, isn't it? Years later, I had a career,
No, you have a serious CV. Like I have a list of your books here, like, and it's like a who's who of metal and rock. So we'll get into that.
Wow.
Do you play much bass yourself?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, there's a whole bunch from here and a few guitars and there's sitar over there. You probably can't see because it's tucked around a corner. And my kids have got guitars and basses in their rooms upstairs, and there's a piano and there's a drum kit. So this place is absolutely full of instruments. And so I play bass as much as I can. In fact, you can't see in this, but I've got a couple of big old bass amps right here in my office. Big old pedal board, packed full of stuff. A couple of little practice amps here and there. It's just packed. So as much as I can, I do. I'm not a professional bass player. I'm a decent bass player. I can play, you know, everything except the most complex stuff. You know what I mean? And I make no pretensions to be able to double thumb and to, you know, do Galician style tapping and stuff. But I can hold down a line and I can be funky, or I can do what you want, basically. But I'm really a writer, a professional writer who happens to play bass. And that makes me a decent candidate for editor of this magazine. The other way of doing it is that you get a professional bass player and you train that person to be an editor, you know, which is often done as well. Either situation works.
It's a nice position. You probably get to try a lot of cool gear, do you? That comes in for the magazine.
I mean, it is the ultimate privilege of this magazine. So obviously I have my team of gear testers, most of whom are much better bass players than me. And we get sent all this amazing stuff. So whether it's your super high-end Foderas and all that good stuff, and, you know, boutique stuff, there's a luthier over here called Anaconda who make this crazy, amazing stuff, and all the way down to your $200 bass. You know, that lately I'm kind of pushing more towards playing myself, because I remember, I'm a bit older than you, I think. I remember growing up in the 80s when if you spent less than a few $100 or dollars on a bass guitar, it was invariably of really poor quality, and you never knew what you were getting. And that's not the case nowadays because of the manufacturing technology, right? Almost always the product quality control is incredible, even at a low level. So I'm pushing more in the magazine towards giving space to affordable bass gear, not because I don't love those super expensive ones, of course I do, but because the actual reader, that the everyday professional player or semi-professional amateur player isn't going to lay out $10,000 on a bass more than twice in a lifetime, if ever. So I spend a lot of time looking at these mid-market entry-level basses even. And you know, I'm continually impressed by them. You know, you can get yourself a decent Ibanez or Yamaha or Squier, actually. Those are amazing things. Epiphone, you know, LTD, all those what used to be called budget brands, but are actually just affordable, reasonable quality brands. You can get them at a highly affordable price, you know, which I really like.
You play professionally with them. Like I have one of the bass I play the most is a Squier P bass that I put new pickups in, and that's grand to go professional.
What pickups did you put in?
I just put Sieber Duncan quarter pounders in it, and I got the bass
something
for
with
free,
a bit more beef. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, even the stock pickups aren't bad, and then you can always get yourself some sort of external preamp, can't you? Step on a Sansamp or step on a
have a Sansamp.
Whatever your preference may be.
Does the job.
Yeah, great. Yeah, in fact, I just got sent. Here we go today. The new Fly rig, which is Tech 21. It's like the portable version of a Sansamp. So in fact, it is. Look. So I'll be stepping on that later on. Yeah, it's a great time for affordable bass gear, and that's one of the reasons that it's fun to edit this magazine.
Yeah, there's a few super cheap brands coming out. I haven't played myself. Glary, have you heard of them? They're like $100. They're like $100. They say I think their marketing thing is they give a free one to loads of influencers on YouTube, and they play them. And people, but they're actually supposed to be. I was talking to a guy who got one, and he said it's actually really good. He was blown away for $100 bass, like what it was like.
Some of these things are absolutely fine. You know, you're still less likely. I think the product quality is not the problem. It's will it last 10 years of gigging? That's the problem. And of course, as a reviewer on a bass magazine, I get sent a brand new instrument that plays really well, but I can't tell you what it's going to be like after gigging it for 5 years. That, I think, is where paying for quality really helps. You get longevity out of your instrument.
Yeah, I've done like 1,000 gigs on my Fender Aerodyne, and the pickups are a bit broken now, but I could still do a gig with it. Like they're a bit scratchy,
right.
But it's
there you go.
Surviving.
Whereas the $100 bass you talked about a minute ago might not have lasted more than 20 gigs. So, you know, they say, is it buy twice? Is that the expression?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's like the carpenters saying, measure once, measure twice, cut once.
Measure twice, cut once.
Are you surprised by the longevity of the format of the bass player magazine, or just the magazine, the guitar magazine as a thing, considering
As a print magazines, you mean?
Yeah, print magazines, considering
Excuse me.
how we're in a digital world.
No, I'm not surprised by the longevity of print magazines for several reasons. One, they're really high quality products, and two, it's really people over 40 who are buying these things. Not always, but people like me who have never really taken to reading a digital magazine. I mean, I read ours, and I'll pick them up from time to time, but I'd much rather have the artifact. I don't know if you can see. Oh, there you go. Yeah, under that bass box of my finger.
Nice.
That's every issue of the mag that I've edited.
Cool.
And I love those things, right? And I keep them as I treasure them as artifacts. So, and I think people still like those things. And I think we have a good few years left of printed mags. I know for a fact. I presume that books will last more decades than that, because that really is a collectible artifact that people like to have around their houses. At the same time, though, yeah, you can't deny that digital publishing has come right up, and advertising has gone down, and paper costs have gone up, and there's a massive global pandemic. So, print magazines are having a bit of a fight, and a lot of good ones have gone down in the last few years. In the case of Bass Player, there really aren't any other. Okay, what are we? We're the last English language print magazine that's only about bass in the world, right? So there are print magazines in different languages that are about bass. A good one is from Holland. It's called Die Bassist, run by a friend of mine, Chris Decker.
Like the name.
Yeah, Die Bassist. I've no idea if that's how you pronounce it, or if you have to do that when you say it. It's probably called Die Bassist.
Yeah, something like something.
Yeah, we like that.
Dutch.
And then there are many digital magazines, PDFs, whatever. There's a good one set up by the former writers of our magazine, called Bass Magazine in America. They're nice guys. What's that? Bass Musician? Bass Gear. That's it. Yeah, that's run by a guy called Tom Bolus, who wrote a review for us recently of the new Neural DSP Quad Cortex. So there's a lot of decent digital mags, all basically covering the same thing. But if you happen to be of the demographic that values print, then Bass Player is really the one that's left, and we do our best to make it a really nice, tangible artifact that doesn't cost too much, and you can rely on and have the best people writing for it. So that's how we've done well.
Has the basic kind of format of the magazine changed over the years? Like is it still people on the front, interviews, a few lessons at the back, and a few kind of gear reviews in the middle?
That's it, right? Sounds really boring when you say it like that, right? So
it's not boring. I have loads of them here. I love them.
So we have a news section at the front, so you're being hit with all the latest developments in the bass world. Although obviously, when you're a printed magazine and you're up against websites that have instant news, then you have to wonder. You have to wonder how much space to devote to it, right? When you could be devoting the magazine space to other things. So for that reason, we devote most of our space to interviews with the musicians, right? Now, these are the best people. We have access to the best bass players just because of who we are and what we do, and we're very lucky. We don't take that for granted, or we don't stop appreciating that. So then we have a load of those. That's where the rock and roll happens, and the fun and the crazy stories, and the deep sort of dive into their gear that they play, and the history, and all the God, what do? We have the oldest, most pioneering of upright jazz bass players, right through to the newest YouTubers, right? Well, next cover, as I do this interview with you, our next cover has got a bunch of YouTubers on, including.
That was another question I was going to ask. Like, do you ever get a kind of a blowback? You did a cover with Jason Momoa.
Momoa, yeah, we did, yeah.
And it was a really good interview. I read it. You did the interview with him. Very good.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. So
and he's well informed too.
Yeah, just to finish up. So we do the artist interviews, and then we have a bunch of reviews. Try and get a really wide range of gear reviewed. And then we have our lessons at the end, right, which is a significant chunk of page count, actually. I think we have 3, 5 or 6 page lessons, and then a couple that are 1 or 2 pages. So you get real schooling, you know what I mean, when you read our mag. Now, Jason Momoa, depends what you mean by blowback. I mean,
I was just reading some of the comments. Some people were saying, why is he on?
Why is he in the mag, dude?
Exactly. There's always those guys. They're keyboard warriors,
In fairness, we can all be a bit like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love those guys. I go to our social media quite a lot and interact with people, and those people really care. That they're there because they care. That's the point. And if occasionally it gets a bit rowdy in there, then that's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
We
just
can
a
live
bit of
with that.
discourse isn't a bad
So
thing.
basically, I've come to realize that when people say, "Oh my God, man, there was so much blowback on that magazine," excuse me, what that means is a couple of people were annoyed in the comments on a social media platform. If the magazine continues to sell well, which it did, and if advertising continues to be high, which it was, really, what have we done? We've pleased a lot of people. If thousands and thousands of people refuse to buy an issue because of who was on the cover, then of course that would be serious. But that never happens. I think our readers are a pretty broad-minded bunch. They know, or rather, I know not to insult their intelligence by putting someone on the cover who is not a bass player. Now, Jason Momoa, of course, he's an actor. He's Aquaman. He was in Game of Thrones. I get it. It's a controversial choice, but he's a bass player. He plays bass every single day. That's what he told me.
Yeah. I interviewed
how many of us
teacher.
do that? There are professional bass players who don't play bass every single day.
I interviewed his bass teacher last week. So he was Jake Gerba. You know the guy who does and he was telling me he practices a lot and he's really good at the slap stuff. So yeah, he definitely deserves to be on it.
Right, absolutely. So over and above his skills as a bass player and whether people think he should be on the cover, the guy's attitude towards bass is phenomenal, right? So he grew up in poverty, as he told me. There was no way that he would have a guitar or a bass or any instrument in the household where he grew up because there was no money. So as and when he became wealthy enough to afford those things, he went at it really hard. So his motivation to play bass is inspiring. And that, I think, is the lesson of that story, right? He's not just a guy who happened to pick up bass just to see what it was like. It was really important to him. It's like a kind of an existential thing for him. So that's why it's important to read about those people. Not because they're famous, not because they look pretty. Obviously, he's a great cover star because of his fame. But in a way, I agree with all the people on the Facebook page who wrote in response to the criticism. Look, if this guy brings bass to a generation of people who otherwise would not have heard of it, isn't that good for all of us? Isn't that good for our community? And of course, the answer is yes, it is. Because what bass player does is represent the bass community. We're not critical of it, or we're not just inhabiting it. We're kind of part of it in a really directive way. And we want the bass to do well. It's what we do out of passion, it's not just a job to me and the people who work on this magazine. We are bass players. We want the magazine to do well. We want people to understand that it's the coolest instrument there is, right?
Yeah.
And to have some fun, and to meet some cool people. So that's really what we do.
And it is hard to sell the bass to young kids. Like, even when I'm doing my lessons, like there's not as many people that want to learn the bass because they don't know what it is. So you're right. The more they see it in the media, the more they might go, I want to play that instrument. I saw Aquaman playing it or whoever, like.
Right. It's only good for all of us.
So this will be out after the episode with the YouTubers on the cover comes out. So that kind of leads into that you're putting some who's on like Charles Berthoud and these kind of guys, is it?
Precisely. Occasionally what we do is we run a special issue that has different covers, right? So this issue that's coming out has 4 covers. First one is Davey 504. Everyone knows who that is who's watching this. This mad Italian who does these crazy...
I'm a big defender of him on this. I'm always defending him. I'm saying he is one of the best slap sounds I've ever heard, and he's really getting people into the bass.
And he's a good guy. He did a great interview. And I said, no one knows anything about your past, really. Can you talk about, being inspired by Gene Simmons and all that kind of stuff? And he looks so kind of impenetrable on the videos. He's like, slap. He doesn't smile. Oh, I love all that stuff. That's clearly just a front. And he's got 9 million subscribers, right? He is the most subscribed person in Italy, which is not a small country, right? I mean, it's a major cultural presence. So him, so he's one of the covers. Then the next one is an influencer on TikTok and YouTube called April K, who is this excellent bass player, funk bass player. She's a model, but she kind of started doing these videos of her playing bass, which has attracted a ton of interest.
I'm not on TikTok, so I'm not aware of her at all, actually.
Yeah, I'm not either. But that would be tragic. A 50-year-old man going
You mean you don't put your phone in front of you and do those
right, and do dancing videos. Yeah, that would be quite a sight. So April K, and she's, I think it's like 23 or 25 or something. And then there's Blue the Tiger, who you might have heard of,
Yeah.
She is a bass player and a DJ from New York who did these DJ sets. But while she was doing her DJ sets, she pulled out a bass and played along with the songs, right, as they were coming out in a nightclub, which is a great idea. People loved all that. And then the last one is Daryl Freeman, who records videos on YouTube under the name The Real Free. And he does these super cool things. It ties in with what you just said, actually, about young people not knowing much about bass. He does these, is it electric bass or is it synth bass videos? You've got to check
Oh
them out.
yeah, now I know the guy. Yeah,
Right. So he is a keyboard player. So he whips out a keyboard and does this kind of cool Stevie Wonder lines on a bass synth, and then does the same thing on a bass guitar. And it's educational, you know, if you're into any kind of music. So that's the new issue. So you could say that's a bit, you know, non-traditional for us. But what I say in my editorial and in the interview with these people is, look, you may think, if you're a bass player of a certain age like me, that being a bass player means mastering your instrument in private, going out on stage and playing a gig to a live audience, or recording your music onto a bit of plastic like a CD that then gets sold. Clearly, that's not what happens now, right? So these people are making tons and tons of money. Not that that's the primary focus of the piece, but they are being well paid and they are successful. And they're bringing bass to a generation of people who might otherwise not do that because there is no money in selling stuff. There's a pandemic, so you can't go out and play live. So to counteract that, because it is a non-traditional cover, you know, what did we have before that? We had John Paul Jones on the cover. There'll be a McCartney cover at some point. You know, no doubt Victor Wooten and Marcus Miller and the rest of those guys that we often have on our covers will appear in due course. So in fact, there's Geezer Butler coming up as well. It's an exclusive for you.
Cool.
Nice Geezer Butler cover, yeah. So we try and serve everybody, is what we're saying. But obviously, if you try and serve everybody, you can't please everybody, right?
No.
So there's always some protest and aggression among the more vocal of our followers on social media. But I don't take it that seriously.
At least they care. That's probably it'd be worse if there was no comments. It was just like no one cares about this magazine anymore. It's going to die.
I admire the fact that these people care. It means a lot to them. Some of them have been reading our magazine for 30 years. We had a special 30th anniversary issue last year, which was fun because Billy Sheehan had been on the cover of number 1 in 1990. And I got him to pose at NAMM for the cover of the 30th anniversary issue, holding magazine number 1, you know, which was kind of cool, sort of coming full circle kind of thing. And not only that, Bass Player had its 400th issue last year. So last year was crazy, actually, despite all the pandemic stuff. Just on Bass Player magazine, it was nuts. But we got through it and did well, and people liked what we did, so we're happy.
Yeah, he started a YouTube channel. Billy did. Have you watched it? He does these really long videos. He's in his shed like with all these basses, and he's showing you because he likes tinkering with basses, and it's kind of cool to see people like him getting into uploading content, as you'd call it. Like,
well, it's the time to do it, isn't it? When gigs are few and far between. Yeah, he's great, Billy. We drop each other a line every now and then, and I remember. Probably the second or third time I interviewed him. It's a long time ago. It might be like 12 years ago or something. I was sitting in a dressing room with him backstage at some show. And I said, come on, Billy, show me the most complex thing you know. He looked at me. You know, all right, watch this. And did this piece by Bach, a double tapping with 2 hands thing. And yeah, it was nuts. And he wasn't even warmed up. You know, it was crazy. I just had to go.
It's about, someone else was telling me they were backstage with Marcus Miller, and all he was playing was bebop vocabulary, like all those lines. But then he went out on stage and it was more pentatonic stuff. So
interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a whole debate about the bebop vocabulary. I think I can't remember who I was talking to. It was one of those jazz heroes. It might have been Brian Bromberg. It could have been Jeff Berlin. It's not long ago, but one of them made the point that bebop vocabulary has only really been regarded as essential bass theory since it was codified at the American music colleges in the 60s and 70s. You don't have to learn that stuff to learn bass.
No.
There are many great reasons to do that, but it's not mandatory, right? So if you've got Marcus Miller going out and doing pentatonics, great. You know, who doesn't love playing those things? They're so warm and friendly and easy, and they apply to almost everything. You don't have to be given it. You know, you don't have to do that. You know, it's good if you can, but it's not mandatory.
Yeah, I do rant a bit like that sometimes because some of my friends who play the bass, they're not really into like practicing as much or improving their craft. But I think a lot of that is because when they go online, they're just being told you need to learn some bebop vocabulary or you need to do all this stuff. But sure, you really could do loads of practice just improving playing the rock lines you know already, or even breaking them apart and going, what was he doing on that song? Like, what was Adam Clayton doing on this song? Or, you know, there's plenty practice
Yeah.
just in that stuff.
I want to give a little plug here to Ariana Kapp, the Austrian bass player, lives
Yep.
in California. She has a book out, an instructional book, which takes a different view. It analyzes the patterns that you know on the fretboard already, and then tells you the theory behind them and how you can exploit that. Because we all know a whole bunch of patterns, don't we? We might not know what they do, but we know that we can run a particular sequence of notes and it'll sound cool in a particular situation. And what she's done is understand that we already have all that stuff, and then all we need to do really is understand what is behind that stuff. So that's something that people should check out. She's a very understanding teacher. There are millions of teachers. Not many of them are can get inside the students' heads as well as that, and she really has done that. So.
Yeah, she's very good. I watch her seminars on Scott's bass lessons. I've seen a bunch of them. Like, she's a really good teacher.
She's great.
And do you think as time goes on, like the key bass thing will get more respected? Like, could you get in Bass Player magazine if you didn't play the stringed bass, but you were mainly playing the keys bass?
I think, given the number of bass players who we don't have room for in the mag, I can't imagine any time soon I would run someone who only plays synth bass. There are already keyboard magazines, which are perfectly good. So I'm not knocking those skills, but the number of amazing bass players I have to really regretfully say, look, I'm sorry, I can't fit you in, who are already great bass guitar players. You know, that would be a little bit unwise, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of the session guys that I get on this, some of them don't bother getting into synth pedals for their bass. They just buy a little keyboard, and it's really important to their employability as a bass player.
Well, I will say, I think it's very sensible to do that. Yeah, if you're a bass guitar player, why not learn how to do a bit of synth bass? And why not backing vocals and all those other stuff? And, you know, God, I don't know. Who was I talking to? Again, I keep forgetting. But someone who said, make yourself useful in your band by being as multi-skilled as you can. So, I think it was the band Thunder. I did their book a few years ago, and I was talking to the bass player, Giles. And if I'm right, and sorry, Chris, if you're watching this and I'm not, he's a mixer, so he's really good at doing mixes. He's a graphic designer, so he can do stuff for the T-shirts and for the merch and for the website and all that stuff. And not only that, he's an amazing upright and electric bass player, and I assume he does backing vocals as well. So all that stuff makes you more employable, doesn't it, as a person, let alone a bass player. So why not diversify? You know, why not learn a bunch of different stuff? Yeah, I'm all in favor.
Yeah, that's true. You may as well. Yeah, you have to, like, because, you know, you often see ads on Facebook or whatever, bass player wanted, must have backing vocals. So,
and why not?
Yeah,
you know, you can learn to sing. You don't have to be a great singer. You just have to be able to hold a note here and there. You know.
Yeah, if you sing in tune and you'll be okay for backing vocals. If you're not doing the lead, doesn't matter.
Right on.
And in your own books, you just released the one with Frank Bello. That's from Anthrax. That's your new one.
Come out in October. Yeah, I think that's my 34th in 22 years. Yeah. So
it's fathers, brothers, and sons. So I actually couldn't get an excerpt of it from online, but hopefully I'll pick up a copy soon. So basically,
it's out soon. It's out soonish.
It's about.
Yeah, that was great. Have you met Frank?
No, never.
Total sweetheart. You know, one of the very, very nicest people in this industry. I've known him probably, I don't know, 15 years probably. On and off, you know, from interviewing him for various magazines, and I got to know him. So we had this idea of doing a book, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that, because he has a hell of a story to tell. And I like to work with musicians who are interesting, not just musicians, people who are interesting, you know. And Frank has had a very, very up and down life, you know. I mean, it's called Fathers, Brothers and Sons because it's a bit different from the usual sort of heavy metal autobiography. Frank has had a turbulent life. His father was absent from a young age, leaving him with all sorts of abandonment issues. His brother was murdered in 1996 in his 20s by in a some sort of gang-related thing in New York. And there was a witness to the murder, but the witness was intimidated by the criminals and withdrew his testimony. So Frank's family never had any closure on that. And then all this anguish, Frank is redeeming, as those of us who are parents will know, by being a good, loving dad to his own son, who's a teenager. And I don't know if you have kids, but I certainly certainly find that being a father is it's not just rewarding, it's like existentially important if you've been through any kind of trauma, as we all have in your lives. You can undo that and redeem that by not passing on the trauma, being a good parent and a loving present dad.
Break the chain of,
precisely. And it's interesting. This book is not solely aimed at men, but it does have a theme of where does the young heavy metal loving guy who knows who Frank Bello is because he likes Anthrax, where does he go for advice and reassurance if, like Frank, he was abandoned by his father and he's been through family trauma and he wants to be a good dad? Where do you go for that? You know, it's not calling this book a self-help book is probably going a bit too far, but it's certainly heading in that direction. And the idea is to talk to people who've been through that stuff and to point out that there is redemption and there is a solution. While I have to say, at the same time, being a really, really funny book, right? It's the stuff that Anthrax have done over the years is nuts.
The thrash metal scene was a bit crazy. Anyway, like all the bands, they were all up to shenanigans.
like you would not believe. And a lot of these stories have been written. And in fact, this is not so much the story of Anthrax, because Frank's bandmate Scott Ian did that really, really well in 2 of his own books. This is more Frank's own personal story, but of course he talks about going on tour and the crazy stuff that happened backstage, and the drinking that they did with Pantera, and you know all the mad stuff that happened behind the public view. So all that is full of it. So it is a really funny book. It's not preachy at all. It's hilarious. All the mad stuff that happened, but it does have a sort of a serious underlying theme.
Have you got a personal philosophy to what makes a brilliant biography? Like for me, it has to be like honest. You know, I couldn't read something that was just like he went there, we went there, we did this tour, that was great, then we did this other gig. Like I read Jerry McAvoy's, did you know the bass player Rory Gallagher for 20 years?
I interviewed him yesterday.
Oh really? Yeah.
For the magazine, yeah.
His book is fantastic. It's and I'm not going to sell some of the stories, like, but he really put it all out there in the book, and for that reason, you'd be glued to it. You'd finish it really quickly. And
well, I think what you just said is the answer to your question. He gave you everything. Like you have to give something, I think, to your readers if you're gonna write an autobiography. I read Eric Clapton's book, for example, and no disrespect to Eric, but he was very reserved emotionally and didn't give an awful lot of his inner thoughts to the people who were investing the time and money and reading the book. And you have to think about them. So when I said to Frank and all the other people I've done books with that we were doing a book, I said, look, just pretend you're talking to one person. You know? Imagine there's one person reading this. Talk to that person, just like you're sitting down having a coffee with them or a beer with them or whatever. Just a conversation like you and me are doing now. That's how to get the tone right. It has to be intimate and friendly, and you have to confide in people and be brave, actually, because it takes courage to put your life story down on paper. It really does. So that's what I said. Be open and honest. Open probably being more important. You have to lay yourself open for people, and that's why it takes courage. And Frank certainly did that.
There's definitely a worry that you might offend people. And then that might make you not put this stuff in. Would be a barrier you'd come against, like.
It can happen, yeah. So when you do these books, they're obviously personal things, you know, that people don't want to talk about. You know, they know their wives are going to read these books. They know their kids are going to read these books. So for that reason, sometimes you'll find someone who doesn't want to throw in too many backstage stories of groupies and drugs and all the rest of it, which is absolutely fine. The other thing is that you don't want to libel someone in these books, just as you don't in a magazine. You know, you don't want to end up in legal trouble, and that's never happened to anyone in one of my books yet, touch wood. But so you do have to be a little bit careful about what you put down on paper, because I say to these people, look, we can go and have a beer all you want and talk about funny stories, and they're great, and they're not inappropriate, they're not offensive, but when they're in black and white on paper, suddenly you end up thinking, you know what, maybe we shouldn't put that in.
Yeah.
Not because it's gross or you know, inappropriate. It's just, do you really want to share that stuff? You know what I mean? So quite often the stuff that comes out of a series of interviews is not as complete as it otherwise would have been for that reason.
I guess if it's something, but involved, maybe it's good to share something, a low point in your own personal life, or maybe feeling terrible from the drink or the drugs or whatever. But when it involves other people, maybe it's best to leave it out.
Precisely.
Yeah. So, is there a difference for you, like as a co-writer, or as a writer, because you've like a big long list of books where you just wrote
Yeah,
on
I
your
think I
own
did.
all of it?
I think I've done like, I mean, man, I think I've done 11 or 12 books that were either somebody's autobiography or the official biography of a band, right? Where you're telling someone's story with their full participation and authorization. And then I think I must have done like 25 books, which are just my take on the story of a band, or a person. Yeah, the differences are profound. So, first of all, when you're writing a book with someone, or with their approval, well, then it's by definition you need their approval, right? Someone else is potentially stopping you saying what you want to say or moderating what you have to say. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's fine. It's a collaboration. I get on well in partnership with people, but you have to bear that in mind when it comes to the schedule, because it can slow you down a little bit, right? People say, well, perhaps you could have phrased that a little differently, or maybe we should take this out, take that out, or add this in. Or you know what? My manager says we shouldn't do this. And, my wife would rather we didn't say this, which is all fine. It's absolutely fine. It just means that everything takes a little bit longer. On the other hand, if it's just you can say what you want within the bounds of legality and taste. So you're freer in that sense. But at the same time, then you're writing a story that is just your interpretation of history. It's not it's not from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So there are differences, and I think it's more fun to write with people, actually, despite what I just said. They have magic address books. That means that suddenly Gene Simmons can do the foreword to Frank Bello's book. And suddenly I can't even think. All the Dave Grohl did the foreword to Max Cavalera's book. I had a phone call with Dave Grohl.
That's amazing.
Hell. Yeah, it's great. He's a real nice guy. He's, as his PR would suggest, he's a real sweetheart. Most of these people are all right, really. They're decent people. And you just get elevated into the world properly. You're not orbiting it as a journalist. You're actually in it as a writer and chronicler of these things. So they both have their strengths, really.
It must be exhaustive when you're doing just the writing of the book on your own, like to find out all the info about the bands and where they met and all this stuff.
I was a journalist first, so my research skills were trained there. I was on Record Collector magazine for quite a while, and now on Bass Player magazine, obviously. And in those situations, you are trained to get your facts right. But it's just a case of having solid research skills, and being aware of accuracy and taking the time to get your facts right. And involving all the necessary people that need to be involved. I say to people who ask me how to get into this, that really, as I age, the more I think the time management is the key to everything, not talent, right? I'm a decent writer,
yeah,
but I'm not. I don't know, insert the name of the best writer in the world, whoever that is. What I am, however, is good at communications, punctual, and hit deadlines. And I tend to be hyper aware of getting things done the way that they should be done, and that's really the secret of building a career, no matter what you do. In fact, you can apply those lessons to bass precisely, can't you?
Definitely,
Time management is very important. To be done.
Yeah,
you don't do what you think you want to do unless it's your solo band. You do what the song requires, and that's a good awareness to have in all walks of life, I think.
Definitely, yeah. So obviously, you have to be a huge fan of these bands. Spend half a year writing a book about them.
Well, it's a good question. You either need to be a fan of their music, or you need to be interested in themselves as people, really. Otherwise, yeah, because it's not just committing 6 months of your life to someone. Sometimes these things take 5 years to do, and you do several at the same time. I remember the first book I did with someone was with Glenn Hughes of Deep Purple, and that was a deliberate decision on my part. I wanted to get into working with people. To understand how that worked, not just writing about people. And I think we spent 5 years on it or something crazy. It didn't need to be that long, but it took that long to get the deal right. It took that long to get all the content correct, the picture research. The manager was involved, the agent was involved. There were 2 publishers because there was a hardback and a softback. So the admin, it really takes up way more than the book writing. Book writing is the small fun bit, Is it exhausting? Was what you said earlier. It's not exhausting. No, you map out your time, don't you? And if you have a job that you enjoy, and it sounds like such a cheesy cliche. If you have a job that you enjoy, it's not like a job. Um, it's really good and it's fun. I'm lucky enough that I get to meet tons of interesting people and learn astounding facts all the time. So the only thing that's exhausting about life is being 50. You know? And I've got
50 is
teenage kids.
50 is the new 30.
Well, I like that idea. I'm not sure if it's entirely correct. More like 40. Probably.
40 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but I will say that you can't complain if you fill your life up voluntarily with busyness. Then you're the one who got yourself in that position. You know, you don't have to do these things.
No.
You know, the more you put into life, the more you get out. Another cheesy cliche, which unfortunately has turned out to be true. So yes, people do occasionally say, "How do you edit an issue of Bass Player every 4 weeks?" And also write a couple of books a year, and also do a fair bit of freelance writing for various people. And the answer is time management. I probably work, I don't know, I certainly work 50 hours a week, maybe more. But it's, you know, it's not hard. You know, it's fun. I've been in this office for 16 years, you know, and my kids have gone in that time from being tiny babies to like massive teenagers. And it's been nice to be around for them. So I have no complaints whatsoever.
But you're the master of your own domain, though. That's the thing. I'm the same. I spend 50 hours a week probably playing bass and making stuff to do with bass. But if I want to take 2 or 3 days off to go do something else, I don't have anyone telling me I can't do that, and I know I'll catch up. Like,
yeah, you have those. It's about control and choices, isn't it? Really, you know, when you're self-employed, you actually end up working harder than you would otherwise. But that's fine. It's, like I said before, it's not really work, is it? If no one's cracking the whip over you and telling you what to do.
No, it's a weird thing. You'll happily do 50 hours. But the book with Glenn Hughes is cool. It's kind of like a picture book, isn't it? More than a traditional biography.
Actually, no. It's 80,000 words of text. It does have a lot of pictures in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I was flicking through it online. There's a lot of pictures in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton of good stuff in there. But no, believe me, we busted our balls on that to get that right. That's a pretty long, hefty bit of text. It's good though. Turned out well.
Yeah, I've seen him in concert. I saw him 2 years ago. He likes to talk about, you know, his past in the concert. He'll talk about, you know, his drink and drug problems over the years, and I suppose he's trying to show people, you know, that you can, you know, get past it and be healthy.
I mean, Glenn is 70 this year, I think, and you know, I think when you get to that point, he's in good nick. He's healthy and you know, healthy and happy. But you know, the years are drawing in, and I think at that point you probably want to share a bit of your wisdom. And yes, he has been through drug addiction profoundly, and has been sober for whatever it is now, 30 years probably, or I don't know, 25, 30 years. And he does like to share those stories, but that's fine because it's him, you know. It's part of what he does, and for him, music and survival and health are all part of the same thing, and they really are, you know, when you think about it. And so yes, he will talk about that stuff, but that's what makes him interesting. You know, he did defeat the dread cocaine and the dread alcohol.
And a lot of his contemporaries have passed away, and he's, you know, still rocking.
People didn't make it. A lot of people absolutely did not make it through those things. And it's interesting, actually. When I look at the people I've worked with whose autobiographies I've written, the majority are sober or cleaned up people. And that wasn't through my choice. That wasn't like me saying, well, I only want to work with people who are addicted to something. It's not like that at all. It's just chance, really. And that the music industry, certainly in the classic rock industry where I tend to operate, is populated by people who've been through all sorts of 70s and 80s addictions, and come through the other side, fortunately for them. And you know, we could all fall into that, couldn't we? You know?
Yeah, totally. When the temptation is just there, like, you know, for these people, it's
well,
always
I mean, okay, and I've talked about this before. I think if you're on a tour bus traveling the world, and it's full of booze, and you've got 2 days off, and people are all smashing it down all around you, and it's really good party and it's fun, then you probably would drink the stuff.
Yeah.
You probably would. And then you do it the next night as well, with people saying, come on, let's have some drinks. Ooh, it's a party after the show. And then you've got that adrenaline surge of the show that you need to come down from in order to get some sleep. So I totally understand why people fall into excess alcohol use. Drugs was never really my thing, so I can't really imagine what would draw you into endless cocaine or endless heroin.
Yeah.
Other than it's there and it's a lifestyle, you know, and it's an expectation almost, actually. Maybe not now, but certainly for some of these older chaps who went through the 60s and 70s and 80s, then probably the environment was more suited to that stuff then.
It became normal. you know, when Black Sabbath were doing their albums, there was people bringing in mountains of cocaine and all that kind of stuff. And if it becomes normal, then you don't question it, I suppose. But these days, it's not really like that in the well, we're all broke anyway, so the big money is gone.
Well,
So.
there's that, but I think the industry won't tolerate it. You know, I mean, who was I talking to? One of the people I work with who went through this said that around 86, 87, when you had people like Motley Crue and Aerosmith sobering up and cleaning up, that was when management really and record companies said, you know what, we're not tolerating this stupid behavior anymore. You know, this is costing us money. You're not showing up at gigs. You're not making fly dates. Your health is bad. You can't play well. People are complaining. You're spending all your money. Let's now operate in a responsible manner. And for once, let's try and behave like adults, right? And I think basically that was I remember it happening. I remember loads and loads of people cleaning up and talking about it in the music press, sort of around 1990. And obviously it never went away. And obviously people continue to use that stuff and suffer the consequences. But I think the industry had to mature a little bit at that point, and it was probably, much as it's boring and old to say it probably was a good thing, wasn't it? You know, for people's health.
Yeah, it's not as rock and roll, but you're right, Jeff. If you want your heroes to be still rocking up to Paul McCartney's age, they kind of have to be healthy. Like
there you go, makes sense, right?
But what was I going to say? I'm after losing my trail of thought there now.
Probably because I was rambling on about stuff.
No, you're great. No, I was go back to your point. You were saying that even if you're not really into a band, their story can kind of inspire you. Because I was watching Supersonic by Oasis, and I wouldn't really be into Oasis, like nothing against them, but they just passed me by. You know, I didn't listen to them.
Music didn't speak to you. Yeah, no, I get it.
But
yeah, that's a good example actually. I mean, I liked quite a few of their early songs, and then tuned out like a lot of people did. It's more the story that's interesting, right? The cultural position and the impact that they made on the world around them. And you know, bands like that don't come along very often.
No, with
that dramatic a story or that profound an impact. So that's exactly what I'm looking for: an interesting story to tell and to dive into.
I think it was one of the best stories I ever saw, where I saw myself in it. They were so working class. They were just such lads, especially the footage of them in the practice room back in the day. Like you were just thinking, sure, that could be anyone I knew growing up with, or myself back.
Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing that they made it, really, because it's not like they came from money. You know, they were like nowadays. You really need to have some sort of supportive background, don't you? Or sort of family who's prepared to buy you a bass amp. You know, no, it's quite a story, a great story.
Yeah, and have you seen much trends in the bass world over the years? Like, a kind of slap bass kind of fell out of popularity for a while, didn't it? Well, in the 90s, the 2000s, it's back now. Like.
Yeah. Well, this is well known, right? And this is before I was working on Bass Player magazine. In the 80s, it was game on for expensive, interesting bass guitars, wasn't it? You know, the first proper 5-strings, graphite, headless. Slap bass was and I do mean slap bass in the 80s style, as opposed to the thumping and plucking of the 70s, right? So your Larry Graham stuff. And then into the 90s, there was that movement towards old vintage stuff, which started with grunge and went into Britpop. You know, so you had Kurt Cobain playing old, what was it? It was either Mustang or Jaguar, wasn't it?
He played both. He brought them into, they weren't expensive, and then he started playing them, and everyone wanted one.
Yeah, right. It was sort of surf rock, wasn't it, before then, you know, like Dick Dale and the rest of them. Then Oasis came along and sealed the deal, because then those bands were all playing vintage Fenders and Gibsons and stuff. Excuse me. And you would never be seen with a fretless 5-string, you know, or a headless bass ever, with a graphite neck or a phenolic fingerboard or whatever. But then that all came back. So now I've done a bit of teaching at BIM, you know, the music colleges.
Yep.
There's 4 or 5 of them in the UK.
There's one in Ireland. There's one in Dublin.
Dublin, yeah, and there's one either 1 or 2 in Germany as well. So I've done a bit of teaching there, primarily journalism and the politics of popular music. And I've seen a lot of young bass players there who are sort of 19, 20, 21. All of whom are insanely good. I mean, they put the rest of us to shame.
Of course,
of course they do, right? Because they've got Scott's bass lessons on YouTube, and they've got the whole of the internet to teach them how to do it.
It's like you've 1,000 Hot Licks DVDs to watch on the internet,
as opposed to what I had when I was a kid, which was literally a tape cassette of some bloke saying, "This is how you tune up your bass."
They're so badly written. I got I teach out of a charity shop, so I got loads of old how to play bass
Oh,
magazines, and they're so badly written. It's like, here are the notes on your bass. Next chapter, here's a load of arpeggios and how to read music, and they've just skipped about 2 years worth
so
of stuff.
boring. Right, exactly. Really, really badly thought out and really boring and crap. Anyway, so these kids that I saw playing bass, a lot of them were playing these headless models. You know, I think Ibanez put out a headless one recently, and a couple of them got Dingwall is popular.
Yeah,
Fan frets.
fan fret. Yeah.
They're all slapping like nutters, and that's really because it's come back into vogue in metal and jazz and in rock and in pop actually and in EDM even, you know. So it's an anything goes situation now when it comes to bass styles for sure. There are fashions and trends, definitely. There are certain models which have their moment in the what's the word? Limelight? Is that the moment in the limelight?
The zeitgeist of bass gear.
And they come and go, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, and you get your old favourites. I was just talking about that Sansan Purley that's come in. You know, they've been making them for what, 30 years now, probably. They still keep going. And you know, you've obviously got, you know, Fender and you know, all the variants of the J&P basses that come our way. Oh my God, where do you want to go with this? I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interesting bass products all the time. Amps, effects, bass guitars, and accessories, you know, and we try and cover as many as we can. Trends, really, the one that I'm trying to highlight and push is what I said earlier to you, which is the affordable basses. Now, I want to put more focus on and really try and zero in on what you can get for $500 or $350 or, you know, £250. Because we can write about $5,000 basses all day, you know, and they're all wonderful, they're all brilliant. But does the kid who's reading this really, you know, is he or she going to go out and buy this thing? Probably not.
No.
So that's what I'm pushing towards as an editor. Anyway, other than that, the goal of editing Bass Player magazine is just to represent the community and make sure everyone gets a voice and chronicle what's happening and try and push forward what's happening as well. And make sure that in years to come, people understood what was happening in the bass world in 2021. That's the goal.
Yeah, well, you can see, like, even we're talking about the influencers like Nate Navarro. He's playing with Devin Townsend now from playing on YouTube. So, like, there's a crossover from people being on the internet world to being on tour with big acts.
Right.
That's starting to happen.
Yeah, why not? Although, you know, at the top, they just don't need to. At the top end, they don't need to tour. They don't need to leave their bedrooms. You know, why would they?
No, but it's nice to get out.
Of course, most people are not at the top end. Yeah. In fact, you were talking about Charles Berthoud earlier. That's probably not how you pronounce his name.
Berthoud, I think.
Thank you, Berthoud. Anyway, he's in this next issue as well with Davey Five before as well. I was asking him whether print magazines are just too quaint nowadays for people like him, and he replied in a diplomatic way, and we had some laughs. But, he's a great bass player, that guy.
Oh, amazing. He's British, though, isn't he? Moved to America.
That's right, yeah. Very, very technically accomplished. Yeah.
Oh, he has a book, a tapping book he wrote with the late Jim Stinnett. It's a really good book.
Right, good. I didn't know that.
So maybe he might bring out another one.
Hope so. You know, I think there's room for books. I really do. You know, much as the online lessons are really good. And in fact, you know, Scott Devine does such an amazing job, as well as all the other people that we know and love in this industry. There's your podcast. There's the Talking Bass podcast. There's With Bass in Mind.
Yeah.
God, there's so many more, aren't there? And, you know, the quality is so high. So it reminds me a little bit of what we said a minute ago about these kids who have all sorts of resources available to them as bass players, which I certainly never had. Which I think is a good thing. It does mean that, yes, people are stuck to screens even more than they already were, but I think that's probably the way it's going to go now.
Yeah, everyone's different. You know, with my students, I'll give them like a 1 month. I tell them to make your practice regime at the start of the month, and then you have it on a piece of paper and a drum loop, and you work on that all month, and then you can consume all the YouTube knowledge you want and at the start of the next month. And then ignore it for the month if you can. You can't ignore it. We're all obsessed with watching these videos, but that's the goal. Like, just focus on your regime for the month, and then consume loads of other stuff again the next month.
No, I like that. I like the month-by-month approach. That's great.
Yeah, but there's loads of new bass websites popping up, as well as Scott's Bass Lessons. So I suppose just people just find the one that they like and the people they kind of gravitate towards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that market's pretty much saturated now. There's a lot of good stuff there. The danger is always that there's too much stuff, good stuff. You go on YouTube and you search for beginner's bass lesson. There's probably 500 of them.
Yeah, well, everything gets saturated. Even the bass podcast world. Like, when I started this, I think there might have been one or two others. That was only last year, and now there's like 10, I'd say, after popping up since. So things just, and then eventually, like, you can't same bass players can't be talking all the time to people, so things do run into a natural end eventually.
Yeah. Eventually, I don't know. Maybe they should just switch the internet off for a year and see what happens.
That'd be great, right? To see what happens.
Well, it'd be good for us. Everyone would come and read our magazine.
Yeah, geez, the magazines would. Well, I've been hinting strongly that someone might get me a subscription to Bass Player for my birthday or Christmas at some stage. So
I hope that happens.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, plugging here, that subscription rates are very, very reasonable at the moment. So make sure that happens.
Well, not even just for me, for anyone's wife or girlfriend or partner of any kind is listening. That's a really good. They always say you're impossible to buy a present for. I can guarantee anyone would be over the moon to get, like, oh, by the way, you're getting Bass Player every week, every month.
Plus a backup copy. Yeah. No, it's the subs department at Future do a great job. They really do put together these amazing deals, especially in America. I can't really understand how they do it, but subscription numbers are high. People love reading the mag. They love it, landing on their doormat every month. Every 4 weeks. So it's my job to try and repay that expectation as well as I can.
Yeah, and the lessons are really good. Like, I have a bunch of them there. Like, and before I ever saw Steve Lawson on Scott's Bass Lessons, he was doing them in your magazine, like the back, and loads of people. And there's really interesting stuff. I don't know how they keep coming up with lessons for the last how many years it's been going, but there's some gold in there. Like,
well, it's interesting. When I became editor of Bass Guitar magazine in 2012. It was a little bit chaotic. There was a lot of overlap, and there were rather too many lessons covering the same ground. So I stripped it down pretty fast, and I introduced a 3-tier system. So green for beginner, amber for intermediate, red for advanced, which seems to have worked quite well. People are into it, and I recruited the best teachers that I could at that level. So currently, that's Steve Lawson, as you just said. Now, Steve is an amazing beginner's teacher. I mean, he's obviously an incredibly accomplished player with a long and respected series of releases behind him. But as a beginner teacher, especially, he's very, very good at not patronizing people and understanding that we don't need to learn babyish music, right? That when we start.
Yeah.
We quite often are quite sophisticated music consumers when we start to learn to play bass, right? And so we have a reference library of music in our heads that we can refer to. So he's very good at striking that balance. And then we have Phil Mann, who does the intermediate lesson, and Phil's obviously a well-known teacher. And he's great at really motivating people, kind of, giving them inspiration and giving them the energy to move forward, take that big next step. And then for years and years and years, the advanced teacher was Stu Clayton, who's a publisher. He's a well-known bass player, incredible fount of knowledge at that level. Well, all levels, but at that level, he's been a great teacher for us. And he's just stepped down, and his place has been taken by Rich Brown, the Canadian bass player.
Oh, yeah, I had Rich on the podcast. We had a great chat. Brilliant guy.
He's just, as we speak, which is where we know, late June, we're just designing his first lesson, and we're going to print that in a couple of weeks. And he's great, another teacher who really understands the students and can really communicate easily in a friendly, warm way. The danger is when you've been teaching, and I know this because I'm a teacher occasionally, the danger when you're a teacher, if you do it for decades and decades, is that you get demotivated and you kind of, the process starts to annoy you, and you've been doing it too long, and you can't really be bothered to sensitively handle the problems that your students have, and you can tell that in the way that some people teach. They're actually quite hostile in the way they teach.
I always take the lessons. I take the whole summer out, well, from June till September off from lessons. So it's like, but all the energy is back in September. I can handle any kind of student, and even the very beginner who can't figure out where to put the fingers on the frets. That kind of refreshes me every year. Like,
but you need that a few months off, otherwise you'd go nuts, right? You're like, why don't you understand this?
Play the goddamn note.
There's only 2 notes. No, I totally get it. And teaching is exhausting, actually, however you do it, whether you do it face-to-face or online or in writing. It's hard because you have to try and really, really create a space for someone to flourish in. That requires effort. tiring. So fortunately, the people that I have on my magazine are very motivated and very kind actually about the way they do it. They want people to do well. And I want to mention Ryan Medora as well, who just started this new column last year called I Spy. And it's called that because she digs into popular tunes that we all know to find awesome bits of theory that we can use, right?
Oh, I actually just started a series on YouTube with the exact same concept. It's called Unnecessary Breakdowns. Right, I spent 20 minutes breaking down a bass line. You already know all the theory and absolutely everything in it.
Well, great idea, you know. It's a very good idea, and people have responded very well to it. And she's already a teacher over at No Trouble, which is a great website. I mean, talking more broadly about teaching websites, not websites, but online presences. I've been quite proactive about building relationships with the forums. So until last year, I had a really cool, which I might resurrect actually, but I had a really cool double-page feature called, I think it was just called the forums actually, and it was a kind of a news section where people at No Trouble, bass chat, talk bass, and for bass players only, did a little roundup of what people have been talking about on the forums that month. And it seems a bit wacky, I know, to have people talking in print about what's been happening online. But what it did was it formed a bridge between the print and online worlds in those bass communities. And I'm friends with all those people, and what they do over there is amazing. You know, they do great work, and they really have a thriving community, just as we do. But ours is in print and on social media, and theirs is a website. So it's nice to know those people. I've been very privileged to meet an incredible bunch of people actually in this last 9 years as editor of the mag. I always knew it was a friendly community, but that's been proven to me time and time again by interacting with these people, primarily at the NAMM show every year in California, but at all the other millions of events elsewhere as well. So yeah, it's a good bunch, the bass community.
The bass community is class. Like even in the groups online, there's very little, like there might be a little discourse, but not an argument, you know, as opposed to some of the guitar groups I'm on. They'll be killing each other, like, you know.
I mean, like I said earlier, if people want to be horrible to each other online, they can do it. It doesn't really affect me. You know, I don't indulge in that behavior myself, probably because I'm not 19 years old. But also, it's not in my nature. You know, I'm much more relaxed about everything than most people are. And people. But as I said earlier, to reiterate, people get this way because they care, because they're passionate, aren't they? And they have their views, which they feel are important, and they are important. You know, it's about how you enunciate that opinion that counts. You know, whether you do it in a friendly way or not.
Yeah, well, I think bass. I put up that video last week, and I made one mistake in my theory. No, it was a mistake. I said I wasn't sure, but the bass player emailed me and did a Zoom call to show me how explain what I was. So that's the difference between a bass. If that was a guitarist, he would have been straight in the comments, like ripping me apart. But he's like, I didn't want to comment, and we just had a chat on Zoom for like an hour and went through a bunch of theory stuff and helped me explain it a bit better. Like, how cool is that? Like,
the guitar player would have said, "Bass craft." Bass crap, you mean?
I'm waiting for that. That's coming.
Only a matter of time.
But cheers for coming on, Joel. I must say thanks for having me in the magazine. It's framed there behind me. It's definitely one.
Where is it? I can't see. Oh, there you are. Yeah. Who's on the cover?
It's it was the London Bass Show cover, so it's
that's Stu Ham, isn't it?
Billy Sheen, Stu Ham, Divinity Rocks.
Man, that's a while ago. Was that like 6 years ago? 2015 or something like that?
Oh yeah, at least 6 or 7 years ago. So.
It's been a while. Well, that's good. I'm very glad we're able to get you in there, and that's nice that you've got it next to, is that a Spectre?
It's a Sire M7.
A Sire, yeah, very
Sire,
nice.
which I don't play because I figured out I don't really like active basses very much. So I never play it.
Oh, that's an argument to get into another time.
It was just too. It just feels like an alien to me after playing Fenders my whole life.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said.
It's so weird. Like, I say, what is this thing? Give me back my Squire.
Yeah, it's too loud.
And it's too loud.
Too much boost.
Yeah, blow your preamps up. But cheers. So you're not too busy on social media. It's just if people want to check you out, just read the magazine. Would that be fair to say?
What, me personally?
Yeah.
No, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but not all day, every day. I try to have a life offline. So I'm highly Googleable. You can find me if you want to talk to me. And obviously, if you read Bass Player magazine, I'm in it all over it, so you can contact me through there. So I look forward to hearing what anybody has to say.
And get the new book, Fathers, Brothers, and Sons. That when that's out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's out in October. That'll be available everywhere, and that's as you just said, Fathers, Brothers, and Sons. Frank Bello's autobiography, forward by Gene Simmons, as written by me.
I can't put it better than that. So cheers, man.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem.